Listen, listen. The wonderful sound of the bell brings me back to the present moment. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in, and breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Breathing in, I know I am alive. Breathing out, I smile to life. Just smiling, that gentle half smile of awareness. And sometimes in our tradition, we liken the sound of the bell to the voice of the Buddha, helping us to come back into the present, to stabilize ourselves, to feel a sense of stability and comfort in how we are sitting upright, allowing the space in our abdomen to be free so we can feel the rise and fall of the abdomen with each in-breath and out-breath. And each time during the whole session for the next couple of hours, when you hear the sound of the bell, always be reminded to come back to the moment. So welcome, friends. My name is Shantam. I'm a part of Ahimsa Trust that represents Thich Nhat Hanh and his communities in India. And welcome to the larger Ahimsa community in India. Many of us have been meeting over the last 25 years at Sanskriti Kendra, invited by O.P. Jain, and that's where Thai stayed when he came in 1997. And now we are being joined in a way because of Zoom and because of YouTube, because of the online situation, because of the pandemic, by friends from across not just India, but around the world. And so today we are joined by the monastics of Plum Village, which is a great honor, it's a great benefit to us in India that we can be joined by our brothers and sisters in Plum Village. And that in many ways is my spiritual home. My wife and I were married there, we lived there. And then we've also been joined by the community of the Aranya Vihar based in India, which is the community that is in the tradition of Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Sumedho. They had asked that whether we could invite the monastics to speak to them. So we'd like to welcome them. And of course, welcome friends from across the world also, because we realize that friends are joining us from across the world. And we know that today is the day to commemorate, I wouldn't say arguably, even the greatest Indian that's ever lived. And his teachings were not just universal, but also relevant, not just to his time, but to our time. So I will invite one sound of the bell, and then I will share what our planned schedule is for the evening. So I might start by sharing a little bit about the significance of Buddha Purnima, the full moon of the Buddha. And then we will be watering the bodhi tree, then sharing a little bit about refuge. We'll be sharing a guided meditation practice, sharing some haikus, a short tea meditation, a few more haikus, a Dharma talk. And then the chanting of the name of the Bodhisattva of great compassion, Avalokiteshvara. And this is a real special offering from Plum Village, from the monastics of Plum Village, especially to send this energy to Indians who are suffering under this COVID pandemic right now. And then we offer some light as we close. So most of you are aware, at least, that this is the day where we call it thrice blessed, triple blessed day. This is the day when the Buddha was born, where he attained awakening in Bodh Gaya, and where he passed away, or what we call attained Mahaparinirvan in Kushinagar. And it's interesting that all these three events happened under trees. But because of his birth and death, we also realize very much that the Buddha was a human being. That's a very important aspect for our understanding. He was not some sort of God. And but people used to come and meet him, and sometimes they were disappointed. They said, "Oh, we came to meet the Buddha, but the Buddha was not there." So he asked. So Anand asked him. Anand was his attendant, and said, "Buddha, what should we do?" And he said, "Well, you can plant a bodhi tree, and when people come, that can symbolize my presence." And so this bodhi tree has now become part of what we take to be a living Buddha in some way, or a symbol of the living Buddha. And here we have a bodhi sapling, a little bodhi sapling, which we should water now as a symbol of our offering to the Buddha. And why this is, of course, a distant cousin of the bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, where we sit often. And we will, while I'm watering it, Amu will be sharing a Plum Village practice song, both in Hindi and in English.
Na 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 jana नातीत न भविष्य पास में तुमको ले लूं आजाद तुमको कर दूं क्योंकि मुझ में तुम हो और तुम में मैं हूँ क्योंकि मुझ में तुम हो और तुम में मैं हूँ No coming, no going, no after, no before. I hold you close to me. I release you to be so free because I am in you and you are in me. Because I am in you and you are in me.
Thank you, Amu. If we look with the eyes of the Buddha, we recognize that there's no birth and no death, no coming, no going. And at his awakening, that was his great realization. And we feel that in some ways the Bodhi tree was his teacher of non-self, of interbeing, that nothing exists independently. And when he sat under the tree, he must have looked at a leaf like this and sort of contemplated or asked, where have you come from? Where are you going? And the leaf may have replied, I did not come from anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I just manifested because of when the conditions were right and sufficient. And when the conditions are not right and not sufficient, I will not manifest anymore. And those conditions are manifold. The seed that sprouted me, the soil that nurtured the seed, the water that nourished the soil, the air, the sunshine, the rain, the clouds, all that, and so much more. And if you took one of those conditions away, I would not be here. And you may see me in another form, but not in this form. And that teaching of the Buddha, the teaching of anatma, the teaching of non-self, or what we understand as interbeing, is that great realization of the Buddha that has allowed us to touch liberation and freedom and live happily in the present moment. So when it was interesting, at the time of the Buddha also, it was not that they were free from pandemics. There was a pandemic, epidemic in Vaishali. And I'm reminded of this because of the COVID time, that people came to him, he was in Rajgir, and they came from Vaishali, north of the Ganga to south of the Ganga, and asked him, Buddha, can you help? And this plague was actually caused by non-human microorganisms, maybe a type of virus, you never know, a bacteria, some say. And the Buddha was able to help, and especially with the mental anguish, which so many people are suffering even now. And one of the medicines that he offered was the Ratna Sutra, the Ratna Sutra. And of course, the word Ratna means jewel, treasure, what we often talk of in the Buddha's sense of the triple gem. And he suggested that Ananda teach this and that people take refuge in the triple gem, or take refuge in the three jewels. Now, at this time of this pandemic, when people are so disturbed, they need a place of safety, of comfort, somewhere they can feel a sense of belonging. And, sometimes we liken it a bit like a mother holding a child in her arms, or maybe even a child in the womb. That sort of sense of, feeling that sense of nesting, a nest. And this has become a universal practice beyond to all the Buddhist sanghas around the world, and across different cultures. So it's interesting that the faith in Buddhism is not necessarily a faith in some sort of doctrine or theory or ideology, but in the fruit of our practice. It is formed by our experience, our insight, and Thai, my teacher, our teacher, for many of us in the Ahimsa Trust, so eloquently said, it is like a seed entrusting herself to the soil of understanding and compassion. So some of us who have a sort of emotional and devotional disposition can take a sense of refuge even in the person of the Buddha. For me, I'm more of a skeptical mind. And so though I deeply respect and love the Buddha, I see the Buddha as the potential of awakening that resides in all of us. And Buddha just means awakening. And that Buddha seed is in all of us, just as the seed of mindfulness is. So I see Buddhahood as a process. It's not just a point of final arrival. And I feel we have all touched and experienced some micro moments of awakening. And that mind of love, that mind of non-discrimination. And our practice is to recognize and cultivate those seeds of awakening. So sometimes we say, the Buddha is my mindfulness. shining near and far. Apodipa bhava. The Buddha himself said, being an island unto oneself and being a refuge to oneself and using the Dhamma as your island. So when we feel confused, when we feel angry, when we feel some despair, we can practice mindful breathing, mindful walking, and return to that island of self, where we will find beauty, warmth, nourishment, the self with a small s. And the Dhamma is the teachings and the practices offered by the Buddha and so many of our ancestral teachers. And so for me, taking refuge in the Dhamma is very clear. I know the practice based on the teachings work, be it the calm abiding, cultivation of peacefulness through the use of conscious breathing and body awareness, or the transformation and healing of feelings and mental formations, be it anger, anxiety, and in this present situation, grief, guilt, even trauma. And so many people are suffering this. And they must have been suffering this in Vaishali also. We didn't have words like PTSD at that time, but there was probably that sort of suffering too. Post-traumatic stress syndrome or disorder. And I think Dhamma is a form of skillful action of body, speech, and mind. It could manifest as volunteer action, generosity in giving, but it can also be the way we speak and share, or even the way we contemplate. It can even be an action of non-action. There are many Dhamma doors. And of course, the refuge in the Sangha. The Buddha mentions the fourfold Sangha of monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen in the Ratna Sutta too. A community that lives in harmony and awareness, supporting and sharing and guiding each other. And we see that again and again in the current pandemic. I know as a Sangha in India, we have grown closer over the last year with daily meditation practices and retreats. Close, dear friends of ours have died in the Sangha. The publisher of Thai's books passed away. The head of the educational community, the head of the, who was leading the mindfulness and educational schools, passed away. Parents or friends who are in the Sangha, close friends, relatives of friends, passed away. One this morning, mother of a friend of ours. And so many have suffered not just from death and loss, but also from the trauma of trying to get oxygen, trying to get medicines. It has been a horror time. And yet, I feel the sense of support of the Sangha has been key at this time. And that sense of getting guidance and getting support from the Sangha. And I feel that one of the great offerings of Thich Nhat Hanh, of Thai, of the Buddha, since he said it was one of the jewels, is the Sangha, the fourfold Sangha. And his great insight, Thai's great insight about the Buddha to be in the 21st century, or maybe, is that the Buddha will be a Sangha, a collective awakening, not just an individual. So I feel the Sangha is a beautiful community, practices joy, realizing liberation, bringing peace and happiness. So dear friends, The Buddha, the Dhamma, Sangha exists in all dimensions, in our heart, in our families, in our Sangha, in our friends. And we are very blessed to have one of our own Sangha from Delhi, who then went on to become a monk in Plum Village. He's been a monk for over 10 years, was transmitted the lamp as a Dhammacharya last year. His brother Bautik, also known as Brother Satyaratna, the true jewel. And he'll be sharing meditation, a guided meditation with us for the next 15 minutes. So Brother Satyaratna, please share. Thank you.
So, dear respected Thai, dear Sangha, we will have a guided meditation to get in touch with the Buddha and to generate together the energy of peace and joy. We know that the Buddha is not only outside of us, but also the energy of understanding and compassion within us. So please find a comfortable seated position. If you're sitting on a chair, we can make sure that our 2 feet are planted firmly on the ground. Our back is upright but relaxed. We can relax our shoulders, our face, and have a gentle half smile on our face. And we can become aware of our breathing, of our in-breath and our out-breath. As the air goes in and out through our nostrils. There will be some words to guide us during this meditation. So if we find ourselves getting dispersed or distracted, we can just come back to our breathing. We will begin by listening to 3 sounds of the bell. Breathing in The Buddha is breathing gently. Breathing out, I enjoy breathing gently. Buddha breathing, I enjoy breathing. Breathing in, there is peace while breathing gently. Breathing out, there is joy while sitting comfortably. Peace while breathing, joy while sitting. Breathing in, peace is the gentle breathing. Breathing out, joy is the sitting. Peace is the breathing. Joy is the sitting. Breathing in, the Buddha is free. Breathing out, I enjoy the freedom. Buddha is free. I enjoy the freedom. Breathing in, there is peace while breathing gently. Breathing out, there is joy while feeling free. Peace while breathing, joy while free. Breathing in, breathing gently is peace. Breathing out, freedom is joy. Breathing is peace. Freedom is joy. So that is the end of our guided meditation for this afternoon, evening. And now we would like to pass it back to the Sangha in India.
Thank you so much, Brother Satyaratna, helping us meet the Buddha in ourselves. Wonderful. You know, it's been a tradition in the Zen community for centuries to write poetry. And one of the forms of poetry, which probably many of you are familiar with, is the haiku. It's basically 17 syllables. I think it goes 5, 7, 5. And Sheila, who's a writer, journalist in our Sangha, while we were doing the meditations, every morning we have a daily meditation as part of Ahimsa Trust's community. I think in the beginning of January, she didn't decide, she said this idea or this practice of doing haikus just came sort of aimlessly and without intention. And she was a little shy of sharing them because, you know, being a writer, she thought they may be too corny or too cheesy. But as a Sangha, we encouraged her, you know, to be fearless, to share this, and that this is part of the practice. So I'm just going to invite Sheila to share a little bit, and then we will have 3 of our haikus read by Anika, Triveni, and Indra. And if they're on, Triveni, there's been a cyclone, so I'm not sure whether she's available, but let's see what turns out. Sheila ji?
Thank you, Shantam. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, like you were saying, that this is completely a manifestation of your morning meditation and of us being together and so on. So it's not something quite unexpected for me. And if it hadn't been for the Sangha being so supportive, I don't think I would have sustained the practice of daily haikus as it just happened. And so right now, up to now, I think there are something like 150 haikus that I have been posting. And I'm hoping to make a collection of it and offer it to the Sangha as my offering of gratitude. I also wanted to say that it's been such a wonderful practice for me because it helps me to get in touch with the present moment and to be able to express that present moment in 17 syllables was such an exhilarating and unexpected emotion. I just felt that I would not have touched this tender part of me if it had not been for you and the Sangha. So thank you very much. My gratitude.
Wild, green, tender life sprouts up unplanned in between the cracks of pavement. Wild, green, tender life sprouts up unplanned in between the cracks of pavement.
return for one last embrace before leaving in burst of tears. Rain, return for one last embrace before leaving in burst of tears.
Amaltas blows me her yellow flying kiss. Call it my survivor's joy. Amaltas blows me her yellow flying kiss. Call it my survivor's joy.
Thank you so much. And in Indra's case, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing, but it just brought tears in my eyes because her mother passed last week and her mother-in-law passed this morning. It's a survivor's kiss. Just touch the joy and the beauty in the midst of this devastation, trauma, and grief. So, dear friends, nothing in the Zen tradition and nothing in India can happen without tea, it seems. Maybe in England too, those of us who are joining us from there. And so we felt that it would be nice to just pause and have a tea celebration, a tea meditation in the middle of our session. Aarti, who's been part of the Noida Sangha and who's been helping conducting workshops and education in the schools, feels that her I guess a great teaching of Thai is no mud, no lotus. It's her favorite quote. And it gives her strength in practice. And I know it does because she's in the middle of hospitals and looking after her father and parents, aunts, all in hospital because of COVID and just coming out and all is caring. So we didn't know whether Aarti could join us, but I'm glad she has been able to. So please, Aarti, just share with us about tea practice and we can drink tea together, whoever has tea and a biscuit. And yeah, let's enjoy this together.
Thank you, Shantam. So as Shantam said, in India, tea is often the panacea for most anything. If it's hot, we have tea. If it's cold, we have tea. If we are happy or sad, calm or worried, tea is the answer. However, often we are so caught up in our troubles and worries that when we look at our cup of tea, we realize that the tea is gone without us even having realized that we have drunk the tea. Life is like that. If we are not fully present, we will look around and it would have passed us by. Practicing tea meditation is a wonderful way to stop, to let go, and come back to the present moment. For as Thai says, it is only in the here and in the now can we experience peace and joy. My first-hand experience of this is what I'm going to share with you this evening. The past month has been exceptionally challenging as my father was admitted to hospital with COVID. And as he's old, I was staying with him. Every night, the last thing that was served to the patients was a cup of medicated tea, which I would have as well. Sitting with this cup of tea, becoming one with it, would help to center me, bring my awareness back into the now, and that would help me face the long night ahead. So I now invite you to join me in discovering the special relationship that I formed every night with my cup of tea. But first, let us begin by sitting in an upright yet comfortable position. Be aware of the contact made by your body with the earth, whether you're sitting on a cushion or on a chair. Relax your shoulders and gently bring a half smile on your face. Come back to your breath and let your mind become one with your body. With this awareness of your in-breath and out-breath, please pour the tea into the cup. Hold the cup with both your hands and feel the warmth. Remember, only if you're truly present will you be able to feel this warmth. Let it remind you, as it did for me, that you are alive and well. Savor the aroma of the tea. I would let this aroma fill the space of my mind. And as it did, I would feel my stress dissolve and fall to the ground. And I encourage you all to drop your anxieties and your stress as you savor the aroma of the cup of tea in your hand. As I would sip my tea, I would remind myself that I have to stop ruminating about what has happened. I have to stop worrying about what may never happen. I only needed to focus on the present moment and the deep gratitude for the timely medical attention that we were fortunate to receive. And as we all sip our tea today, let us focus on being grateful for being able to experience this present moment, this unique moment, which will never come back again. Let us expand this gratitude to include all those nameless, faceless people who have grown harvested, packed, transported, and even often made your cup of tea. This cup of tea that we hold in our hands connects us to the whole universe. The sun, the clouds, the rain, the earth, and all those people, irrespective of space and time, who are drinking a cup of tea. What a wonderful example of interconnectedness. I would use to remember this and not feel alone or isolated, as many of us feel these days. A simple cup of tea that became my friend indeed every night and helped me touch peace. Please continue to enjoy your cup of tea for the next minute. And while you do so, reflect on how fortunate and blessed we are, and about the many, many things that we have to be thankful for, especially in these difficult times. I would just like to conclude this tea meditation with a quote from Thai, who says, "If we are not mindful, it's not tea we are drinking, but our own afflictions and illusions. If the tea becomes real, we become real. When we are able to truly meet the tea, at that very moment, we are truly alive." Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Arti. I really enjoyed my cup of tea. But what I also discovered is that on my teacup, I don't know if you can see it, there's something inscribed. I don't know if it can be seen. Maybe not. It says, "No mud, no lotus." And that is kindly done by some sisters in Plum Village who offered it to us, to Gitu and me. So yeah, so we're drinking with all our brothers and sisters in Plum Village, and also, of course, with each other and the whole Sangha who's joined us today. And I'd like to welcome people as they've come along, because we've been seeing people joining halfway. And one of the traditions in tea meditation at Plum Village is also that we share our songs, stories, poems, etc. So please, we would be welcome the next 3 haikus from, I think it is Raka, Raki, and Sheila, if I'm right. So I will invite the bell and please share.
Her clothes still hang on the washing line, even though she died yesterday noon. Her clothes still hang on the washing line, even though she died yesterday noon.
Rain now weeps for the unwept, now stops to caress the birds and flowers. Rain now weeps for the unwept, now stops to caress the birds and flowers.
So many leaving so suddenly, and the shameless Amalta in full bloom. So many leaving so suddenly, and the shameless Amalta in full bloom.
Thank you, dear sisters. And for those who don't know what the Amaltas is, it's the laburnum, which is in full bloom right now. And as Sheila says, shamelessly in full bloom in the midst of our deep trauma. And we are very, very grateful to Brother Faplai, who's an old friend. Actually, we were lay friends together in Plum Village many years ago. And he ordained in 2002, came to India with Thai in 2008. We planted a tree together on the land which is to be the Plum Village in India. It's slowly manifesting, called Jamun Village. We then went on pilgrimage together. And sometimes Gitu, my wife, says that we're like brothers or 2 seeds in the same pod. We have a lot of characteristics which are similar. So we loved Brother Faplai. And he's going to speak from Plum Village. He's a Dharma teacher there, a senior teacher. But he wanted me to just share a little bit about how things are in India right now, as he was going to share. And of course, the newspapers, the images are so powerful, and especially that's been going around the world. And but things are very close to us. I live in a so-called colony of maybe 500 plus houses, and 9 people have died in the last month. And the month isn't even over yet. 1 person every 3 days. Another friend from I'm in sector 15A, Noida. There's another sector 93A. Somebody wrote to me today, 30 people in their sector have died. And these are not large communities. And what is going on in the villages? I mean, the villages don't even know. They think, if you can't cope in Delhi, which is where we are right now on the outskirts of Delhi, how are we going to cope in the villages? No health, it's a disaster. And we've been reading from people who deal with mental health. There's an organization called NIMHANS, and they're saying that they have a helpline. And normally they get suicide tendency calls maybe in 1% of the cases. Now it's gone up to 7%. And a lot of the suffering is economic crisis, hopelessness, helplessness, this panic, grief, guilt, because young people are feeling the guilt. Maybe they brought the virus into the house because they went out. And they're not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know I'm reminded when Thai, of course, had that same situation in the middle of the war. And we are all students of Thai, and he's taught us how he handled that. And I feel that sort of is manifesting in insomnia, in loneliness, in depression. And we know that the Buddha can help in these things in some way. And then just to top it all, Cyclone Yasa's hit this morning at 130, 140 kilometers an hour on the eastern coast, hitting Orissa, Bengal, Jharkhand. And it's large parts have been inundated with water. And yet, of course, not to forget that many, many good things are going on. Really good efforts from different communities. Of course, we know about the Sikhs and the Gurdwaras and the food packets and the PPE kits and the people who are going out of their way in cremation grounds. We were wearing a PPE kit yesterday, and it's so hot in there. And people in cremation grounds voluntarily across religions, Muslims cremating Hindus, Hindus helping bury Muslims. This is, there's no discrimination in this. And as Ahimsa Trust, we've been doing a lot of work in 6 villages in Bengal. We have 40 cases there, people in Dehradun, and we've been supported by friends from across the world and in India, including the Thich Nhat Hanh Foundation, which is supporting the work we're doing. And I feel that this is the least we can do in terms of physical support, in terms of, oximeters, oxygen concentrators, masks. But the mental trauma is huge. And so we're trying our best. And that's why we felt that it would be wonderful to hear from a brother like Brother Faplai, his sharing, what he might say. And I'm also reminded just before he starts of a quote which was given by Arundhati Roy at the end of one of the essays where she wrote. And she said something like, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. And this one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. And we can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcass of our prejudice and hatred or avarice, our data banks, our dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with a little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. I would say ready to strive for it, walk lightly. Dear Brother Faplai, my dear Dharma brother, please welcome you to share.
Dear, well, it's loud. Dear respected Thai, dear beloved Sangha, dear beloved community here in Plum Village, we feel connected very much with you in India. I'm looking at the camera. I know India is in that lens, and I feel very blessed to be able to make this connection with you all, with us all, I'd like to just invite Brother Daubi, our brother from Indonesia, to invite 3 sounds of the bell, just for us all to come back to our breathing, come back to this present moment, and feel ourselves present, just like with the tea, and maybe listen to the sound of the Buddha's voice calling us back to our true home. So this talk is part of this wonderful way to be together, and it's in the spirit of togetherness, a practice session together as a Sangha, as a community. And it's not, I don't feel like I'm a teacher, teaching to, but rather a member of the Sangha. And in this time, I feel in many ways India is teaching us. So, and when I listen to all of the sharings from the tea meditation, the haikus, and Shantam's beautiful way to convey what is happening, it really made me feel like your Sangha in India has so much to offer and to be able to teach us the way to deal with in difficult times, to touch joy and cherish the life we have, to make use of the beautiful moments that we can have, the beauty around us. Today is also, as we know, the celebration of the Buddha's birthday and also enlightenment. And so this day is also one of celebration, as well as touching the aspects of how we take care of our suffering in these difficult times. When I just want to link a little bit when Shantam talked about the wonderful manifestation of actions in India, the amazing work that is happening through different communities like the Sikh community, the Gurdwaras. There is a link to the UK also, because I'm quite proud of our Sikh community there, because they also stepped up a lot, providing meals for those that were in isolated old people in England. They're coming from I think the one that I heard the report of is from the place of Gravesend, which is south of London. And there was a moment where there was a lockdown. I think it was a sudden overnight ban on England being able to go to France. So there was a sort of traffic jam of 800 truck drivers all at Dover about to go over, and they were stuck, kind of completely locked into just being in their trucks. And this community, because it had already been active in offering meals, was able to mobilize and within a day offer 800 hot meals. And I think they offered a choice. There could be a curry or another kind of more English meal. I can't remember what the choice was, but I think both options were vegan, if maybe vegetarian. So I was very touched when I read this, and as I say, felt proud of our Sikh community in the UK, and I think the world has been inspired by their actions in India, and there are, of course, so many other people, communities, the hospital staff. They're a kind of community between the doctors and nurses, and all acting so courageously, you could say helping strangers, and yet they risk their life, and many are catching to become sick, and etc. So we have this gratitude. We know also that the situation is overwhelming, and as much as people want to help, they're also dealing with their own personal situations. I know of other people that are helping in schools to help children, and who's also on a daily basis many families maybe they're losing their mother or father, and teachers stepping up to offer support and comfort to their students. So in so many areas, people are needing to be there for each other. So, such gratitude and a feeling of deep respect and appreciation for those people. Back to the Buddha's birthday. Back to the Buddha's enlightenment. When the Buddha set out on his path, it was to find out how can I take care of suffering. He recognized suffering in himself, all around, and he, under the bodhi tree, found an answer to take care of suffering, and discovered something quite remarkable, that there is also well-being. That there is also a need for us to acknowledge our suffering, and through that acknowledgement there is a path to well-being. So we don't ignore our suffering, we recognize, we name it, we say, yes, I am suffering. And that already is the beginning of the path that can liberate us. Aware of that, when we are invited, for instance, in a guided meditation, as we had today, to touch joy, to touch the joy of sitting and breathing, we realize that joy, that feeling of joy that comes from the practice, is not in conflict with our suffering. It's not somehow the opposite of. It's more like the mud and the lotus engraved on your teacup, Shantam. It's a recognition that the two can go together and there is not a contradiction. That is the way of life. Just as in life there is birth and death, and there is suffering and there is happiness, and it's our way of relating to that reality that we have more or less suffering. The way in which we learn to handle our suffering is so important. Yeah, and the Buddha had many ways he's transmitted to us that have been kept alive for us and renewed. But essentially, the human condition somewhat remains the same. You know, you feel like there was, just as there was pandemics in the Buddha's time, there was all of the emotions that people had to deal with, the grief. There is the beautiful story in the Buddha's time of a lady who went to the Buddha with anguish for losing her baby, and the Buddha advised her to get a mustard seed, I think it was, from any house, just one house where she was invited to get a mustard seed from each house, but at each house she had to make sure that that house there was nobody had died. And she thought that this would be an easy task. So she went to the village, and one by one, they all were very happy to offer her a seed to take. And then she just double-checked, but has anybody died in this household? Oh yes, you know, somebody died. Our father died last year. And she said, oh, well, I can't take the seed from here. And one by one, she went round the houses and discovered that she couldn't find the house where there had not been a death. And being an intelligent woman, she got the message, and she was able to go back to the Buddha, and even she was in her grief, having lost her baby, and she took refuge in the Buddha and understood the teaching, that she was not alone in her grief, and rather than looking for the miracle of bringing her baby back to life, she looked to the Buddha as a teacher to teach her how to take care of her suffering, her grief, and to be there for other people. So this story is a reminder that we are not alone in our grief. I think in the current situation in India, that is never more obvious. Everybody is suffering. There is a kind of overwhelm with the amount, and this is a suffering in itself, this feeling of overwhelm. I think even with the sense of an overwhelming suffering, we have to say, okay, I acknowledge I am overwhelmed by this suffering. If we've been able to establish a practice of coming back, taking refuge in the breath, and finding our stability, we can maybe bring that to our overwhelmed feeling. If we have not practicing, it can be much harder to touch the peace when we have strong emotions. So, embracing our emotions, just as Shantam shared, the image Thai gives is like a mother holding her baby, her crying baby. And mindfulness is said to be the energy of the Buddha. The substance of the Buddha is this energy of mindfulness, and it has this capacity to embrace what is there. The more we have cultivated our mindfulness energy, the more we have the capacity to embrace what is there. So, when the Buddha had his time under the bodhi tree and he got enlightened, what did he get enlightened about? Yeah. I think, again, it's already been said earlier in this session, but one of the key things that we hear about is this nature of interbeing, this sense that, this discovery, if you like, that we are not separate selves, that we are interconnected, and that is the nature of life. That is our nature. That is nature's nature, and we are part of nature. And with that, how can one discriminate? One of the things that really attracted me to Buddhism and the Buddha was this spirit of non-discrimination. And that is one of his, for me, a kind of a key quality of the Buddha's teaching and the Buddha as a person, this quality of non-discrimination. And I think it comes from this deep insight, this enlightenment about interbeing. The Buddha is said to have said, I wasn't there personally, but even I've been on the pilgrimage, but he's said to have said, I discovered an ancient path to an ancient city. It was like a rediscovery of something that was already there. Maybe he had to hack through the brambles and the bush to get to this ancient city. But for us, it's like the path is already been cleared, and the path, there's many signs on the path now for us to be able to follow it quite easily, you would think. But we often get caught in the finger pointing at the moon. We get caught in the signs. We enjoy looking at the map, but taking those steps, actually practicing, that's something we have to do for ourselves. Even it's the baby steps. We need to do that for ourselves. We need to take those steps. And I think drinking a cup of tea is not too difficult. And it's a real start. You know, it was so moving. If someone, one of our friends in India, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, can drink a cup of tea with her father in that hospital with mindfulness and cherish the life and the relationship there, we know that this practice is meaningful. It's not just something superficial. If we can bring the practice of drinking tea to that, this is not a trivial practice. To be able to be there for our loved ones when they are suffering, that is something we really dearly wish to be able to do. But if we have too much suffering in us, it's not so easy to do. We may not be able to be stable, to be free in that moment. We may be frightened by the situation because it's touching our own fear of our own death, of the potential for us to also get sick. So the Buddha invited all of his disciples to practice on a daily basis, to acknowledge the truth that we do get sick. There's not an escape from that we will die. And acknowledge the fear that comes with that, the very natural fear, the very kind of, you could say, healthy fear. Because it is the kind of fear that protects us, that helps us avoid dangerous situations. and says, I care about you living. I'm going to make you feel frightened so you don't die. But in these times, so the Buddha offered this practice so that his disciples would be familiar with this fear and be able to calm it, and then look more deeply and see something else. When we get a bit beyond the fear and we've taken care of the emotion, we have a chance to see something reflected, if you like, in the calmer, still water, and we can see, like the Purnima, the full moon, reflected in the lake, that tells us that there is much, much more than just the fear, and there is something beyond that not even death touches. We heard that we can be in touch with people drinking tea beyond time and space, the normal constructs of our ideas of how things are. Yeah. When the teaching was given to Anathapindika, when he was about to pass away, and he was in a lot of pain with his sickness, he was invited to meditate on his gratitude and his beautiful life of service to the Sangha. Meditate on the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and then invited to meditate on his body, which was deteriorating and in pain. But also see that he was much more than his body. So, aware of my eyes, not caught in these two eyes. Aware of my body, not caught by this body. Meaning, yes, you have a body. Yes, everything you experience it is there. But you are much more than that. You're much more than your personality, even. Because you're connected at a very deep level to nature, to everything that is, including the whole cosmos. Thai, in his insight, also talks about this nature of interbeing. He talks about the sacred forest, the power of the sacred forest, when he talks about the Sangha. How we are trees, like we are, kind of liken ourselves to trees in a forest, growing and offering shade to each other, offering nutriments to each other, supporting each other in a forest. The classical view of a forest is just individual trees competing for resources with each other. But it's been proven. There is a woman called Suzanne Simard who's just come out with a book. This could be the subject of a whole Dharma talk, but how trees actually collaborate, and they absolutely, just as Thai expresses he would like to see us as a Sangha, it is very true that they support each other, sharing nutriments, sharing information, sharing wisdom. The mother tree, she describes, there are mother trees in forests which have been around many hundreds of years perhaps, and they have the wisdom and the experience of previous climates. And they maybe connect themselves with many, many trees and offer them nutriments from the photosynthesis. And trees of different species supporting each other. In the spirit of non-discrimination, it's not a competition, it's a collaboration, it's a community of trees. And that is why they survive so well, because they collaborate as a community, And the power of a Sangha is that also. Our collective energy is much more than the sum of just our individual practices. There is something we generate, something that happens when we come together as a community, as we're doing today. I would even, invite us to wherever we're seated, to recognize, here I am, where we're in Plum Village, and you may be in India, or you may be in some other part of the world, and just to find yourself where you are, and know that just like in the forest, we're actually all connected. We are physically connected right now by Mother Earth. We're all sitting on Mother Earth. We all have the full moon above us. We might also see that we are connected by the practice, by the aspiration to practice. By the energy of mindfulness, awareness, just bringing awareness. I am here, I am alive. And we see that, yes, we are connected by love. This joy to be together, this natural instinct to be there for each other, to share life together in cooperation, in the spirit of interbeing, including sharing our suffering. Compassion is to suffer with. Compassion. It's something that comes naturally to us when we're in our Buddha nature. And when we're caught in our smaller sense of self, and we're caught with a lot of emotions of fear and anxiety, we can maybe lose touch with that Buddha nature, that natural compassion. Yeah. And maybe we are isolated in a home on our own. We don't have the chance to be with people physically. But if we can remind ourselves we have our Buddha nature, and we have our connection to people, to our mothers and fathers, to the spiritual ancestors, to those that are here and now alive, to this community, to the trees, to the rivers. It's all here, and we can find ourselves, even we may be on our own, we're not on our own in the way we thought. So we can let go of that thought that makes us suffer. Through the practice of mindfulness, concentration, we come to that insight that we are alive and we are not alone in our suffering, that we are not alone at all, that we have each other. We may feel hopeless, but when we connect like that, we start to see ways in which we support each other. Even to restore our sense of well-being, so many possibilities can open up when we restore our connection to our Buddha nature, to our natural compassion, our natural joy to be alive, and gratitude. And this is possible, and it's wonderful to know that we do it together, so that we generate collective energy. And from that place we can do many things, and we can serve, and we can help. We can find ways to help. It may be with just beginning with our family, but then we can extend and see how can we help in the nation, our local communities, etc. And one last thing about Buddha nature is that it's always there for us. All the work is that we make ourselves available to it. When we've lost connection with it, we should know it's still there. It's not damaged, even by our trauma. It's there, undamaged, fully, like the sun behind the clouds. Yeah? So even the clouds are there, but we know. If we've practiced deeply, we have that experience, then even when the clouds are there, we remember that experience and we can have confidence, have faith that that is the case, even we're experiencing overwhelm. And we can be in touch with that peace. And Thai's calligraphy, if you want peace, if you really want peace, if you need peace, peace is with you immediately. But through the way of the practice, through really connecting, calming, and asking for compassion to be there, and having that faith that that peace is available to you, you can touch that peace when you need it, when you really need it. And this is borne out by people who find themselves in crisis situations. You don't have to be Buddhist to experience this. It's part of our heritage, part of the good news that this Buddha nature, or this love, God's love, you could call it, the self with a capital S if you want, it is there for us, our true home. So let us give thanks that we can connect today. Let us also know that our practice really matters. Each in our individual situation, whatever we can do, however we can support each other in our local community, we need to know that that is so important. Don't give way to despair or hopelessness in that sense. And Sister Chandok, Sister True Virtue, I believe, will be giving an introduction to the Namo Avalokiteshvara chant, which is a chant to connect us to this great compassion that is our heritage, that is who we are, who we truly are. So we'd now like to invite the brothers and sisters to come so that we can offer the chant for India and for the world. So thank you so much for being here, for offering.
So we would like to invite all the monastics to come up also for chanting Namo Valo.
Most respected Thai, dear Sangha at home and dear Sangha in India, today we have an opportunity together to send the energy of compassion and deep listening into ourselves and out into the world. One of the things that we need most of all in the world is the capacity to listen deeply, especially to listen deeply to those who suffer. And we know that we ourselves have suffering. We have suffered in the past, and maybe we are suffering now. We need to come home to ourselves, to listen to our own suffering, in order to be able to give rise to a feeling of compassion for ourselves. That is the first and the most important point. And it is also how the monks and nuns will practice as they chant today. The first time they chant the name of Avalokiteshvara, they will come back to themselves and recognize their own suffering and feel compassion for themselves. And the second step is to be able to listen to the suffering of those who are close to us, to recognize that those around us in our family also suffer, and to be able to listen deeply, to look deeply into the suffering that they have, in order to be able to send to them the energy of compassion which in this chant is being generated. So we are not alone in generating compassion today. We are doing it together. And as you heard, the energy of the Sangha, listening deeply, generating compassion, is much stronger than any individual energies added up together. And then we want to send our energy further out into the world. We know that there is a great deal of suffering in the world at this moment. And we know that there are bodhisattvas, like the bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, who are doing wonderful things to relieve the suffering. And we want to send our support to them with our own energy of compassion. Just to have a compassionate thought in the present moment is very healing for ourselves, and it is also healing for the world. And as we chant the name of Avalokiteshvara, we may feel the tears come into our eyes. These are not so much the tears of sorrow, but they are the tears of compassion. And we should allow our tears to flow. Although we don't want to be lost, we want to continue to follow our breathing. We know that that is the sign of the compassionate nectar in our heart. So as we chant, we are all together. The one who chants and the one who listens to the chant are not separate. You may want to join your palms while listening to the chant, to bring the energy of your mind and your body together as one. Avalokiteshvara is a Sanskrit word, as you probably recognize, and it means the capacity to look down, at the suffering of the world and to generate compassion. But of course, first of all, we want to look at our own suffering, and then it will be much easier to look at the suffering of others and embrace it. So we are here today to give you support so that we can all be together and we don't have to feel alone.
chantam to close the evening in India, including offering the light. So please stay for that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, dear sisters and brothers, for sharing your heart and your intention of healing to us in India, and it of course reverberates to Hue, to the world. And thank you for all this, because I know how much trouble it is to get all the sisters and brothers together in the Dharma hall together to share like this. And it's the start of the wake-up retreat, and so there's so much going on. And you celebrated Basak yesterday. In fact, while we were chanting, while you were chanting, the Baisakhi Purnima, the Baisakhi full moon, arose in India. And it is now dark here outside, but the light of the full moon is lighting up our garden. And of course, the full moon is a huge light, reminding us of our capacity to awaken individually and collectively. And we often associate the full moon with the awakened mind, like Brother Faplai was talking about, how it reflects. And in that reflection, we also know that the moon does not discriminate. So we want to offer light in a symbolic way, a light to dispel the darkness of ignorance. And that light that symbolizes the compassionate warmth that you have just shared, and the wisdom of the teachers and ancestral teachers and of Thai. And of course, to cultivate that inner light of mindful awareness. So we know that even lighting a candle is a spiritual act. And so we can cultivate a calm and stability and a concentration when we do that. So as we light the candle, it is important to come back to ourselves by means of conscious breathing, following our breath. And that's how we bring our mind home to our body, becoming fully aware of what we're doing. And this is not something that I'm teaching or sharing, only it has come from my teacher Thai, and from his teacher, and his teacher, and his teacher. And there were probably innumerable through our lineage, going through to the Buddha. And what they taught was to invest the energy of mindfulness and concentration and insight into lighting the candle. Often this is done in the form of an incense, but people do it in the candle. And so when our mind and body are present, as we were taught in the tea meditation, that is the energy of mindfulness. And as in the chanting, when we're completely attentive to what we're doing, this deep listening, as Annabelle was sharing, that is the energy of concentration. And with that energy of mindfulness and concentration, communication with the cosmos becomes possible with every cell of our body. This is what we've learned from Thai. So every year when we share the Buddha Purnima or the Baisakhi Purnima, we offer the light, the candle, to the banyan tree at Sanskriti Kendra. But today we thought we would offer that light to somewhere special in your home, at your altar, or you could take it out under the full moon to join the light of the full moon. And I will offer it to our bodhi tree that we bought in the beginning. So as we have a candle and a matchstick, let's invite the bell. I'll invite the sound of the bell so that we can really fully be present as we light this candle. And then after we light the candle, we will close. I will invite 3 sounds the bell, and we can transition to where we want to go within our home, outside, and carry the energy that has been transmitted from Plum Village, from the Indian Sangha, to each other as a collective body, to awaken individually, collectively, and dispel the darkness of suffering. So thank you, dear friends, for joining us as we bow out and enjoy the full moon and feel the joy and compassion, and carry that within our hearts to everyone we love and everyone who needs that care and at this difficult time. Thank you, Plum Village, for joining us and celebrating our 25th Buddha Purnima. You're always with us. Thai is with us. And we are grateful to everyone who joined us today. So stay well and be safe.